why in the world did you decide to get board certified in functional medicine?
My patients needed it. It's just, Dr. Klimas told me a long time ago why she had integrated functional medicine into her practice. And she said the patients with traditional care were not getting better. And that's the thing. And this is what functional medicine does for you. It's primary care, but it's primary care 3.0. It helps you to help yourself, because a functional medicine practitioner is going to integrate the best of conventional medicine, the best of functional medicine, and bringing those two together, you have a higher level of care.
Welcome to the Hope and Help podcast, where we talk about science and science-based tools for fatigue and chronic illness. I'm your host, Haylie Pomroy, #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Fast Metabolism Diet. I am back in school, guys, finishing my PhD in neuroimmunology at the Institute here, and I will always be a fierce advocate for those of you that feel you need a little bit of help and a whole lot of hope. Today, we have a really exciting topic. I want to tackle the current state of medicine, how we see the different aspects of medicine, and what we use as an institute to really kind of unravel these complex diseases. I always try to bring you the top of the top, guys, and this time I feel like I really hit it out of the park. I have one of our esteemed practitioners, Denise Kruszynski. Her area of focus is people with complex disease, post-acute COVID-19, environmental toxicity, and what we call stealth illness. Denise, thank you so much for being here today. I am fascinated by what you do, super fascinated by your background, and I know our community is just going to get so much from your help today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I love that you started out in urgent care or emergency care. Am I correct with that?
Yes. I worked for more than 25 years in a level 1 trauma center.
Wow. And so you saw patients that were in a total state of crisis, right?
Completely dependent upon the healthcare system.
Wow. Okay. So how did that prepare you for what we're seeing in clinic today?
Working in the ICU made me realize that people needed care before they ended up in an acute care setting. And that really is what prompted me to go out of the ICU, to get more education and to get experience in different areas of primary care. And then just by providentially, I ended up in a complex chronic illness situation, which was so much like the ICU, except that people are walking around terribly ill, but they're walking around, whereas in the ICU, they're not interactive many times.
Wow, that's an interesting analogy between the two. You know, so many people that are dealing with chronic disease and chronic illness are just pushing through every day, not getting answers and not getting solutions. Before we started, you and I had this conversation about there were some actual really good things that came out of the pandemic. And I try to focus on that. I know that it was a horrific time for many, but you distilled it down for me in a way that was, I was like, okay, we got to turn the cameras on because I want everybody to hear this. So what do you feel came out of it that was so positive?
I think that what happened during the pandemic, it came into sharp focus how our metabolic wellness impacts our health. There are people who went into the pandemic living their usual lives, but didn't realize that it just took one little hit and they were in a very bad situation. So what happened is that we began to understand how the different parts of the body are integrated. The gut, the lungs, the heart, the brain. It really came into sharp focus during the pandemic how much that our bodies are really integrated and how dependent we were really on good nutrition to prepare us for situations like this. So a lot of things came into focus. Nutrition, toxins in our environment, what other things, why did some people get very sick and other people just pretty much sailed through it? There's a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason, right? Same virus, different body, and a different stressors. I mean, that was what was really fascinating to me. I love that people became savvy with more medical nomenclature. There's always been kind of this divide of, your doctor understands science and you are within, your 3 to 7 minute appointment, typically, you are subject to what they feel like you should be exposed to from a science perspective. And what I loved during COVID was that the community started talking. I mean, you had people talking about cytokine storms and their immune system and how they adapt to stress and their adrenals and the lungs, and all of that was a good thing. I think it brought everybody to the table. One of the things that I think forced that, though, was, in my opinion, how tragic the functionality of our current healthcare is. And I would love you to walk us through the different, maybe, facets of healthcare.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'd love to do that. I really wanted people to understand that there's different places for us to go to in different parts of our healthcare. So if we're in a terrible situation, the acute care, the tertiary care setting is for those situations that need immediate urgent care, whether you're in the ICU, whether you go to an emergency room. If you really need intervention, you go to an acute care if you need antibiotics, but that's the setting for immediate care.
But a lot of people are going there for their primary care visits because they can't get into their doctors.
And then they leave disappointed because all they didn't help them.
Right.
They leave disappointed, but that's not the setting for maintenance. That's not the setting for everyday wellness.
Really treatment or cure either, right? It's just crisis intervention.
It's crisis intervention. It's a quick Band-Aid, and you move on and they'll send you back to your primary care doctor, which is really where you should be. Unfortunately, at the primary care level, primary care doctors are not equipped. They don't have the time to give you extensive root cause care. So what they'll do is they treat that immediate care and they try to keep you healthy in a general way as long as you're not in terrible condition. But then if there are undermining factors that they don't have time to get to, you're still going to become ill.
I have so many people in our community ask me all the time, why didn't my doctor talk to me about nutrition? Why didn't my doctor talk to me about stress management? First of all, they don't have the time. And there's a lot of, from what I understand, there's a lot of restriction also on, I got a massive debate. I have a lovely doctor that I adore. Somebody was stepping in. I got a massive debate. I actually fired him with the doc that had stepped in because he wouldn't run a lab for me. And I'm like, we didn't even get to have the conversation. He said, I don't find it medically necessary. I said, well, I don't know you. I've talked to you for 3 minutes. Let me give the opportunity to tell you how it is medically necessary. So I said, you don't work for me anymore. I emailed my doc and she ran everything. And it came back positive. Like, I'm just so grateful that I had somebody that was an advocate for me. But people are really struggling right now. So we have urgent or emergency care. Then we have our primary care. What role should they play in our health and wellness? Like, what's the ideal and how was it set up originally?
I think that one very important thing is just what you brought up. Right. Primary care physicians need to know you. Don't be jumping around. Find yourself a good primary care that you like, that you trust, that you can talk with, and stick with that person. If you're going to a pharmacy, stick with one pharmacy. That pharmacist will get to know your medications, and you have all your medications in one place. They'll be able to tell you, are there interactions? But when we're hopping around for care to different places, when we're going to urgent care, when we're going to the emergency room care, sometimes then our care becomes very fragmented.
I was talking to a client the other day and I said, a lot of people think about where their kids should go to school or, where their kids go to elementary school or childcare or college, right? And I said, put at the very least, that kind of effort in figuring out your healthcare strategy well before you need a doctor. My mom just had a situation where she called, and she's at Loma Linda. She's at a great place. She called to get an appointment. She had a few things going on. And they said, we'll call you in 3 months to schedule an appointment. And I got on the phone because I said, no, there's no way, Mom, that, and they, in 3 months, they would call to schedule an appointment. And they said it would be 3 to 4 months after that 3 months to get her in to see the doctor. And I was just so discouraged. She's 83 years old. She's doing great, but had some things go on. And I thought, what am I going to do? Send her to emergency care? I'm lucky. I get to call you guys. And, we got her in. They ran everything. There was something going on. We're addressing it. But what if she had waited 7 months? How are people supposed to navigate? What are we going to do with the fact that that's the reality right now? It's almost impossible to get into your doc. And if you do, you've got 7 minutes average, right?
So that's the thing. You mentioned two really important things. You're her advocate. You need to have close people, whether your family, whether your friends. You need an advocate when you go in. People are less likely to get brushed off when they have an advocate. But the second thing that you mentioned is very important. You go into a primary care doctor, maximum 15 minutes. Now, 15 minutes for you to tell the doctor what's wrong, for the doctor to assess you, for the doctor to come up with a plan of care, and for the doctor to document. Impossible. It is not doable. So what do people do? So people go into specialty fields thinking they're going to have more time. So now they don't have 15 minutes. They have 20 to 30 minutes. But then they focus on one system.
That's what I was going to say. Then they focus on one part of your body. And again, what we learned during the pandemic is that everything works together. Otherwise, we could have just given, an antiviral and moved on. We wouldn't have had this neuroinflammatory long response or the cardiovascular inflammatory response or the immune suppression, all the things that holistically happened in the body with one virus, right? I agree with you. I think we learned that the body is this complex system that totally works together. I love that you said advocate and be an advocate for yourself. I grew up in the generation where I had a very passive relationship with my physician. I was, grateful that they were taking their time to see me. I was happy, that they would prescribe or whatever. And I, I had to get feisty or ornery when I got really sick. I didn't have a choice, right? I had to say, is this the path? Is this the protocol for progress? Is this the path for my wellness? I couldn't tolerate the medication that I was on. They didn't really have the choice, right? But I think it's shifted. I think that it has to be a partnership. And if it doesn't feel like a partnership, I don't really see how you can get well with that person being on your team.
You have to be your own advocate. You're absolutely right. You need to do your own research. Medicine traditionally has been patients going in, doctors spoon feeding, don't ask any questions. Really, they don't have time for questions. And the patients just basically say, because of the hierarchy of authority, the patients just say, okay, it's been a patriarchal kind of a system. You come in, you listen to the doctor says this, the doctor said, what is this medicine for? I don't know, but the doctor said I have to take it. That's not good self-advocacy. You need to know what is going on in your body because nobody cares as much as you do. You think that everybody cares, and we do care, but nobody cares as much as I care about me.
And you're with yourself 24/7, right? A funny situation we had in our community, we work through, anti-inflammatory foods, weight loss, working on adaptability, the adrenals, all of that stuff, right? We had someone that had posted that, they had just recently ate great foods, lost 28 pounds. What happened was their inflammatory markers came down and their cholesterol came down significantly. And we said, hey, reach out to your doc, make sure you talk to him about, lowering your cholesterol medication. And the response back was, I can't go down until I ask my doctor. I said, awesome, let's get your doctor on board. Literally 7 months took to be able to see that doctor. So I think people are kind of trying to look for solutions. If we can help you guys in any way, please let us do that. You can go to HayliePomroy.com, HayliePomroy.com/member, and jump into our community support group. I would love to have you there for free for 30 days. Check it out. Ask questions. We help you prepare a request for care so you can get ready for your doctor's appointment and communicate health and wellness and nutrition in a positive way. Denise, I just wanted to make sure that people know that, we are here past the podcast if they need help and need support. And I am always bringing questions in clinical about our community. And so I appreciate it. As part of the Institute for Neuro-Immune Medicine, what type of patient are you seeing, and does it work to have success with those patients in a 15 to 20-minute visit?
I don't think I could get very much accomplished in a 15, 20-minute visit because I need to know about more than just why they're tired. I need to know more than that. I need to know, how are they eating? I need to go, how are their bowels working? I need to know, are they sleeping? I need to know how their social relationships are, how their work is. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into, I'm fatigued. There's a lot of things that go into why people have diabetes. There's a lot of things that go into everything. It's your whole system is is integrated. So every system impacts every other system. So by the time I ask why 4 or 5 times and they've answered me, we've already spent maybe half hour.
What's the average that you spend with a patient at the Institute?
My first visit is, without exception, at least in 2 hours. It takes a long time to really get down because there are a lot of things that people will not even think it's important. And then after we talk a little bit, they'll say, like I just recently had somebody, and I won't go into detail because it's very recent, that there was something going on. And after talking for a while, she told me that she had had a toxic exposure, but 20 years ago. Had no idea that this made any difference at all until I specifically asked about this period of time. And then we could move forward and say, oh, maybe that's what the problem is. But before that, we could have no idea. And I have many stories. We all do. As we dig in, we find out, oh, do you have family that has this? So maybe it's a genetic component. So it takes time to unearth things that people don't really realize. When people are used to coming in, they're like a machine gun telling me as much as they can tell me at once because they figured that I'm going to cut them off.
That totally hurts my heart. People come in and I love when they've Googled. I love when they've done research. I think it's awesome. I love when they have lists, right? And to your point, I feel like they've been so conditioned to not have enough time or not have a voice, right? That they start to just go blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, we got this. Like I got plenty of time set aside for you. It's me and you. We're going to talk through this. And if you think of more later, we're going to go there. I want to just take a moment and say, I think that there's been people outside of medicine, the patient, that have said, there's something wrong. It's not possible for me to get care in, a short period of time. I think it's profound that we're having people like yourself and a lot of the practitioners in our institute, many institutes right now that are finally saying, we can't practice effective medicine this way.
We can't. And really, that really brings us to what are we going to do about healthcare? We need to do something different about healthcare. We need to have educated patients as well. We need to educate children even from the time that they're young. How do you eat well? So that they understand they need to be fed well in cafeterias. They need to have education, nutritional education. If you were asked me, I think if I were to if I could make my own world of education, I would say we need to bring back music and art into schools because these children, they have a lot of stress, a lot of inner angst. There's no way for them to express it. There's no avenues in our current system
with
for
testing.
Them to express it.
That's not stress reducing. Standardized testing.
Standardized testing. Our school system has been set up to bring children into compliance with how to work in factories. It was really set up a long time ago. There was this model in Russia that we adopted in the United States in the 80s with the bells and the times. That all came because they were trying to get children to get trained to work in
kind
factories.
Of fall in line, if you will.
That's not the kind of education that brings people a relief of stress. That's the kind of things that makes crazy mice.
Yes, yes, we see that in science, right?
Crazy mice.
Yeah,
right.
And bringing life sciences back into the kids' school. In Grayson's kindergarten class, we lost our science teacher. And through the school at the time, they couldn't get, I don't know, another one hired or funding or something. So I came in and did life sciences, and we planted a garden. We did the ladybugs and the earthworms, and then we cultivated or we grew the food. We cooked the food. Those kids know about different oils to cook in. I think about it now. She's 22, and I thought she learned about seed oils and olive oil and all of that through the life science classes. And you're right, kids need that. You just gave all of us listening, though, permission to research what's going on with them. I again, I'm dating myself, but there's been a lot of gaslighting that's happened when people come in and I've been in, meetings where I say, I hate when my client goes to Google Doctor before they go to me. And it just breaks my heart because I think, we are like, bring us articles, bring us data, bring us information, bring us collaboration, right? I think I always say if the end goal is to get you well, I will literally tie chicken bones around my neck on a full moon to get you well. I don't care. Let's just get the job done, right? I agree with you. We need to start from the ground up. Our babies, I teach classes, and one of the women has a brand new baby, and sometimes she nurses during class, and sometimes the baby just snuggles on her chest. And I was teaching classes when I was pregnant with both my kids, and I keep telling her, she cannot start attending these classes too young. She's our fast metabolism baby. We talk about it. I love that they're exposing. She's having that experience. What are we going to do about our current healthcare now? And then I want to talk to you a little bit about what does it mean to be a functional medicine doctor and what is functional medicine? But how do you envision healthcare changing? It has to change. I mean, people are doing, all kinds of home remedies, which I love, things at home because they can't get into their doctor. We've got home labs now. I mean, in almost every state, you can get all the labs you want run. People are taking medicine into their own hands right now. And I'm kind of watching it going, this is interesting. What do you think needs to happen?
I think we're always going to have to start with education. We need to I think that a lot of how Dr. Klimas envisions the role of INM, the Institute for Neuro-Immune Medicine, is that we educate the physicians, we educate the patients so that they are armed for the physicians, so they're more aware that there are toxic exposures. These are the things that you can do for chronic fatigue. These are the things that you can do for mold toxicity. There are actions that we can take. And then for the patients, also information for them. What can you do? How do you speak with your doctor? How do you prepare? How do you protect yourself? How do you not absorb more toxins from the environment in your food, in your water, in the vicinity that you live in? I think it starts with education. First of all, we need to educate doctors, as Dr. Klimas has envisioned, we need to educate the patients. How do you take care of yourself?
Absolutely. It's interesting because at the Institute, so we're under the umbrella of KP-Com, of a medical school, osteopathic medical school. And as part of my PhD right now, I'm taking an integrative nutrition class focusing on immunology and the endocrine system. I have a bunch of second and third year osteopathic docs in my class. I know.
I love that.
So the instructor is a doctor of functional medicine, IFM, like yourself. And the eyeballs of some of the medical students, of some of the just really deep dive into these cases that they're doing from the immune system and from the endocrine, the hormone systems. They're like, we're second and third year and we've never been exposed to this. I'm so excited that they're taking those classes. It's elective. I'll say that I think it should be mandatory. But it's really cool to see these young up and coming docs being at least exposed to this.
I think that's great, and I agree. That needs to be incorporated into a regular education. I think that the traditional old time physicians really look at functional medicine as not really validated medicine, and that's absolutely not true because Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who was one of the originators of IFM, he was the founder. He's a biochemist. So we're talking about medicine it's not superficial medicine. It's not anecdotal.
It's deep dive.
It is a deep dive into cellular metabolism. I can tell you when I went through those courses that he and a bunch of other brilliant physicians put together, it is a deep dive into cellular metabolics. It's just it's deep.
So you brought up Dr. Klimas. Dr. Klimas, I always ask her, obviously extremely well accomplished in HIV, in ME/CFS, and Gulf War injury, immunology, incredible. And I say, why in the world do you take these integrative medicine and functional medicine classes? Are you just bored? What's going on? And one day she said to me, I can't help patients without it. It's now a love. But at first it was a necessity. So why in the world, you are booked beyond belief, you're super successful. Why in the world did you decide to get board certified in functional medicine?
My patients needed it. It's just, Dr. Klimas told me a long time ago why she had integrated functional medicine into her practice. And she said the patients with traditional care were not getting better. And that's the thing. I can treat them with traditional care, and I'm going to be frustrated and burned out like a huge majority of physicians. And I'm going to go home frustrated and feeling like I didn't do a good job. And that's exactly how it was. I did work in a traditional practice before, and it was very frustrating. It was about giving medicine for heartburn and medicine for blood pressure and medicine for the lungs and medicine for this and medicine for that. But I never did have time to help them how could I help them help themselves? And this is what functional medicine does for you. It's primary care, but it's primary care 3.0. It helps you to help yourself, because a functional medicine practitioner is going to integrate the best of conventional medicine, the best of functional medicine, and bringing those two together, you have a higher level of care.
Right. I love that.
And wellness.
Yes, because there's few, medications or surgeries that'll necessarily heal you. The healing has to come from within. And we're dynamic.
Right.
We're not reductionists.
They help. Right. In the meantime, until so something terrible doesn't happen, it helps. But that's where you shouldn't stop with your medicine for your heartburn. You need to move on and fix yourself so you don't end up with 25 medications that you're taking every day.
And why do you have heartburn?
It's
not because you're deficient in that medication. I mean, the medication might quell the symptom, but why is this happening in the body? And I love that we focus on that as an institute. And I love watching you focus on that with your patients. That's why.
And there's side effects. The other thing is to mention, you're taking all those medications. It has side effects.
And also, all the studies that have been done haven't been done with those medications taken in combination. That's what always blows my mind. We had this medical ethics class, Dr. Speth, and we were talking with this, big pharmacist sits in the pharmacology department. And I said, wait a minute, I can see, what are the side effects of drug A, drug B, drug C? We had someone that we looked at a case with 13 medications. There was not one single study ever done that showed what the complex side effects were with combining those drugs. And they are chemistry. It's like saying we're going to go back to elementary school. If I put yellow and blue, it makes green. You can't say if I put Prozac and cholesterol medication, it makes Prozac and cholesterol medication. There is a synergistic effect and a chemistry that happens within the body that we need to account for, and you can't do that in 15 minutes. You just can't. So I want to just button this up with what can people out there do? What can we do today? I love the advocacy. We do this in our community. We do this request for care. We take you through totally getting prepped for your doctor's visit. It's invaluable. My kids use it. I used it when I fired the doctor the other day. I said, really? Well, here's my request for care. Actually, this is what deems it medically necessary in my mind. And let's have a conversation. He said, I don't have time. Sorry, I got to go. I can't sign off on your labs. Didn't even read the paper. I mean, I was very upset, but I solved it. But what can we do? How can we change this situation? If a person's out there right now, they're struggling. They don't feel well. We would love to see them at the clinic. First and foremost, you're welcome, right? But what if they can't? What should they do?
I would say the first thing that they should do is just sit down and write and think about their life. Think about the foods that they eat. Think about the relationships that they have. Think about their activity. Think about their sleep. Think about their work stresses. Just try to put all of those things together and write them down and try to look at patterns. They may not be able to pull those patterns out like a functional practitioner. However, it helps when you write everything down and you think about the timeline, even from the time that you were born, what's been going on all that. And then when did you start feeling bad? Try to become self-aware. When did you start feeling bad? And what happened just before that?
I love that. I love categorizing, and I think this is a great way to prepare. What's my nutrition like? What are my relationships like? What's my sleep like? What are my top stressors, right? What is my work? Is it fulfilling? Is it gratifying? That's why I'm back in school. That's why you went back to school. I mean, we didn't have to. We didn't need to. It's just that fulfillment in knowing that you can actually truly help a human being. It's rewarding beyond anything, right? Yeah.
You go home feeling like you did something that day to make the world a better place.
Right. It's such a cool place to be in. I love that. I also love what you just said about a timeline. The body always whispers, then it talks, then it screams. And I think we don't give people permission to seek help before the scream. You know what I mean? Before the trauma or the tragedy, or before you're just not functional. And so I love that kind of timeline and what happened. Where can people that maybe can't come to INM, how can they find a functional medicine doctor? Is there some resource or something?
If you go onto the Institute for Functional Medicine website, they have a list of all of the not all of them, I'm sure, but all of the practitioners that have been certified for functional medicine. You can even Google functional medicine, but a little spotty out there, you're not really sure.
And you guys, even if it's a functional medicine doc, I mean, this is my recommendation, have an interview process. So I sent my son, he's 26, to the doctors. We go to UCLA a lot. We have a doc where we live in Colorado that we love. And he had his request for care as he's all dialed in. And the nurse said to my son, "Oh, is X doctor going to be your doctor?" And he said, "I don't know. I'm interviewing him today." And I thought that was so cool.
That's great.
Isn't that great?
Great.
Like maybe it's not a fit. And so whether it's functional medicine or us, we that's why we have a multitude of practitioners and why we collaborate on Fridays and we move clients around. Sometimes it's not the right fit or the right knowledge base.
Right. And if you don't feel comfortable, that is exactly what was going to be my next point. If you don't feel comfortable, if you can't speak with your practitioner, if you can't speak with his nurse practitioner, you might have a nurse practitioner, a doctor. Be sure that you can actually have a conversation with them. If you request things, that they respect you. They respect your requests. They may not necessarily do everything that you want them to do, but they need to show you due respect and listen and take into consideration what you're saying. And if you don't feel like you have a good rapport with that doctor or that nurse practitioner, I would just move on. And I actually did the same thing. I had one interview. I saw this doctor and his nurse practitioner once, and then I didn't go back because they were completely disregarded. And you think as a healthcare provider, like you say with your mom, you think that they would give them a little bit more leeway, but they don't.
No. I appreciate that. Denise, I can't thank you enough for being here today. It just means everything to give all of the people out there that are struggling right now permission to advocate for themselves, right? And also some real solid direction on taking kind of what maybe feels like an out of control situation and just getting it organized. I think people get better care when they walk in with that. And also having an advocate. If you have a friend or a best friend or a girlfriend,
very important.
Yeah, have somebody help you. We even had somebody that used first year medical students to help them get organized for doctor's visits and stuff. There's a lot of things that you can it's kind of funny, right? But like
good for the medical students, good for them.
Good for both of them, and eye-opening on both ends too. Absolutely. Well, I know everybody's going to want you back. Thank you so much for being here. And it's really cool for us to understand kind of where and how to navigate the healthcare system. It's stress. I will share with you, it's stressful out there. And I know that you appreciate that and you listen to your patients. And so I know you embody it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.